anyone? No, all of us are here, right? All the guests are here, so you can start. Anju, it's over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, good evening, all. To start with a note, if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. So, good evening and a warm welcome to one and all present here. Welcome to Decode. This is Architect Anju from Dr.MGR University, Chennai. So, I'll be your host for today's session. Thanks for joining us today. So this Decode session is a second technical session which has been organized by Dr. MGR Educational Research Institute in collaboration with Institute of Indian Interior Designers on integration of lighting in architecture, which will be presented by a special speaker, Dr. Amardeep M. Dugar, who has done his PhD in lighting research and design. Followed by, we would also have a product presentation by Mr. C. Tej Prakash from Lighthub. We hope you'll find this session very informative and useful. Okay, so now to begin this session, I would like to welcome the Chairman-elect of Institute of Indian Interior Designers, Chennai Regional Chapter, Architect P.A. Ravi. It gives me immense pleasure in inviting you, sir. So we would like to hear a few words from you, sir. Over to you.
Vanakkam, good evening to all. I'm happy to welcome you all in the behalf of IIID CRC chapter. I welcome all the IIID members, architects, interior designers, students, and stars of today's event, our beloved speakers, and all friends. Our IID CRC had started its journey from 21st April 1999 and recently celebrated 21st Charter Day in a grand manner. IIID CRC has not yet left any opportunity unattached in fulfilling its obligation to provide knowledge and information to its members until now. We have been conducting a lot of seminars and workshops in IIID CRC. Recently, we did the Mahan series, which is a grand success seminar, which consisted 10 webinar sessions presented by individuals covering the works as well as technical sessions in different topics. This was extremely well received by the fraternity. And IIID CRC jointly with Dr.MGR Education Research University conducting parallelly Decode the knowledge series, which is to aim to educate, to equip, and to empower our design community of the students. But now, a new chapter of knowledge sharing will be added to a list of IIID CRC activities today, and one more event like Connect, which is 6x6x6. So both the events are parallelly going together in IIID CRC for the past 2 months. So we are targeting through this seminar all the architects, leading architects, interior designers, traders, and interior designing students. Our goal is to be together, to bring the minds to give the talk and the knowledge about all the subjects in interior design. Today, we have 2 speakers from our design world. One is Dr. Amardeep Dugar from Lighting Design and Design Research Studio, and Mr. C. Tej Prakash, who is from Light Art. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
We are waiting for the lighting design is very important topic in interior design, because lighting gives immense ambience in all the interior design what we are doing. So today's topic, I think, may be more interesting, I think, and all. I am also eagerly waiting for the topic and all. And also I welcome the Dean Dr. Sweta Madhusudanan, MGR University, and Architect Vidya and Anju Saravanan for this event, and our all MC members, Pranita Verma, our coordinator, and welcome all the delegates to this event. Once again, I welcome all the participants from all over India. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was nice to hear from you, sir. So now Keetana will be welcoming our dean. Over to you, Keetana.
Good evening, all. This is Architect Isna from Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute. I'm really happy and grateful to introduce our HOD, Architect Radhika, Faculty of Architecture, Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute. She's been always very active in collaborating worldwide with great minds for students to attain knowledge in all aspects of architecture. We heartily welcome you, ma'am. Now, we would like to hear a few words from you. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Keertana. On behalf of Dr. MGR University Faculty of Architecture, I would like to thank IIID for giving us this opportunity. We have been coordinating a lot of webinar series from the day the lockdown started. So we've been exploring a lot of areas also. So we've had speakers from various fields to enlighten our students as well as our fellow architects. And this opportunity which IIID has given us has also made us explore a new area where we are trying to bring in a lot of experts for building services and other related things which students need to know when they have to practice architecture. So I welcome all of you for a knowledge-packed evening session on lighting design by Dr. Pugar, followed by a product presentation by Mr. Tej. I also thank our faculty, Architect Vidya Naveen and her team for meticulously planning this event. She's been with us and she's helping us throughout this webinar series from the day it started. So, and along with her group of students, she's been organizing, she's been preparing videos, and she's been so supportive. So I thank Architect Vidya Naveen and Architect Mohana Priya also, she's been helping us. So I also welcome all the participants who have joined us for this Decode 1.0 webinar series. I won't take much of your time, so let us, I pass on the mic to Kirtan. Thank you, Kirtan.
Thank you so much for organizing this session, ma'am. Now, I request Dr. Pranita, who is one among the coordinators of Decode from IIID, to introduce our renowned speaker, Dr. Amardeep M. Dugar, for today. Over to you, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Pranita,
your
can you
audio is
please
on
unmute
mute.
yourself?
Unmute yourself.
That was beautifully handled, Kirtana. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to introduce our speaker for the day. The first is Dr. Amardeep M. Dugar. He is a trained architect and an advocate for all the elements of lighting, design, education, and research. Dr. Amardeep Dugar founded Lighting Research and Design based on these elements. After completing an MA in Architectural Design from the University of Wismar, Germany, he went a step further to pursue a PhD in Architectural Lighting from Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, to solidify his academic and professional leadership role into a career at a higher level. In the area of lighting design, his notable projects include the Hayat Palace in Rameshwaram, the Medical Society building in Berlin, for which he has won excellence awards also. He continues his teaching and research. He is the coordinator for IALD, which is the International Association of Lighting Design for the India region, so under which he is organizing a whole lot of hands-on workshops, not only for professionals, but also for students, which I hope we will take a huge amount of benefit from. Today, we are privileged that we have him here to share his expertise. And I hope as students and practitioners, what we look forward to is to make the entire grammar of the building visual for you. To understand the services is the most important part in any interior design or architectural designing that you will undertake. Please don't hesitate to make the most of his expertise today. Ask him questions. Find out how he designs, what is the site experience, what all should you take into consideration. That is where we at IIID and MGR University would really feel proud of that we have done something significant in everyone's lives. With those words, I would hand it over to Dr. Amardeep. And I invite you for your presentation, sir. In the meanwhile, I would also request participants to mute and stay muted through the session while he is presenting, and turn on your captions so that whatever videos or whatever happens, you will find these subtitles on your screen. On the bottom of your bar, you have a turn on captions, a CC block in square. You can just turn them on.
Ma'am, shall we play the video? Okay.
Dr. Amardeep, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I am. Just waiting for her
Okay,
to
so
start
we'll,
already.
yes. So go on, Anju.
Okay, ma'am.
Integration of lighting and architecture. Now, before I deep dive and delve into this lecture, there's an interesting story that I'd like to share about this lecture. I had first written this lecture, prepared this lecture almost in 2005, I think. And little did I know at that point of time that I'll be using this lecture till this day, because the topic of integration of lighting and architecture is a timeless topic. And at that time, I had just completed my architecture, and then I had done my master's in lighting design. So I was all brimming with so much of excitement about this whole aspect of bringing architecture and lighting together. And it has been that excitement that I write that lecture. And over the years of working and practicing in this field for so many years now, the lecture has been developed and developed, although the title and the topic remains the same. The core issue and the core essence of this project remains the same. There's so much that has changed now in terms of its contents and the way I look at the whole aspect of integrating and lighting and architecture. And that is what I'm going to be sharing in this lecture. So an overview of the lecture. First, the aim of the lecture is to provide concepts and perspectives for integrating lighting and architecture, as the title suggests. The focus will be on exterior and interior spaces, and we'll be looking at residential, commercial, and urban functions, urban design functions. And the attributes are all that are aspects of architecture, interior design, and urban design, which include activities within the space, the colors, form, furnishing, materials, and textures that are there in a space, whether it's built environment, whether it's an interior, an exterior, or an urban design space. Now, background for this lecture is that the idea of writing this lecture was to explore knowledge beyond textbooks. Now, over the years, one question that I've been asked with so many people is there one textbook that describes about lighting design? I would say yes and no. I agree there are some amazing books on lighting design with which you can further your knowledge. But time and again, I have to stress on this fact that lighting is an experiential art form. Lighting is an experiential science. One has to experience lighting to be able to understand or know more about lighting. So the idea of preparing this lecture, as over the years that I've said, is to explore knowledge that is beyond textbooks. And also, I would like to explore techniques for presenting application experience-based knowledge. Now, when I wrote this lecture first in 2005, obviously there are a few things that I did. And over the years, I realized that those were outdated modes of presenting. So I've obviously gone ahead and presented the same concept in a completely different manner. So this is just an experiential thing, an experimental thing for me. This lecture will be with me for now. It's been there for me for so many years, and I'm going to be experimenting again and again over the years. With every time I practice, I'll be able to present. Now, this is the first time I'm presenting this as a webinar format. So this is something new for me, and I've had to make necessary changes for a webinar. And let's see where the whole thing goes in this whole journey of integrating lighting and architecture. Contents of this lecture will be, we'll identify design issues, we'll look at design processes, and one by one, we'll look at design of residential spaces, commercial spaces, and urban spaces. Now, the information provided in this lecture are opinions, which are very personal opinions, and they not have to do anything to do with what there, and which are only purely based on my observations and a whole bunch of case studies.
Anju, we don't have sound.
Oh, yeah, ma'am. 1 second. Ma'am, actually the audio is playing only, ma'am, but 1 second.
Do you want to start again and from the point that we left off?
Okay, 1 second.
Pause and restart.
Maybe you can stop presenting and then present again.
रेजिडेंशियल कमर्शियल अर्बन स्पेसेस के बारे में मुझे पता लगेगा अभी तो नॉट
best possible manner, and I wish
Ma'am,
I was
you're
a
able
part
to
of
hear?
the projects.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
yes.
always good
Okay.
to have those case studies
Thank you.
too, the inspirational projects.
Sorry for the technical issue.
Identification of design issues. First thing I'd like to mention here is that there are a lot of misconceptions about lighting. Lighting is first considered as an engineering issue. That's the first misconception. By an engineering issue, I mean that a lot of times when I've had project meetings, discussions with the project team, the only question that I'm asked is, have you met the lux level requirement in the space? Are you meeting 200 lux here, 300 lux there, 500 lux there? All of these have been met. Yes, these are the fundamental requirements of meeting lux levels, but I think there's a lot more into lighting design than just the minimum lux levels or the wattage per square feet or square meters. The other issue that I see is the other extreme, which I call the decorative issue. A lot of times, especially in residential projects that I've seen is that, oh, the design has been done. Now let's go ahead and buy some lights. Buying lights is definitely a part of the whole design process, but that's not everything. It's not just pure decoration. Lighting has got a lot of other too many facets that one has to be looking at while designing. And that's the misconception about lighting. So what are the facts about lighting? First fact is that lighting is an ergonomic issue. Human eye perceives interaction between light and space. So light by itself is invisible. You cannot see light. You only see light when the light bounces off an architectural surface, be it a wall, be it a floor, be it a piece of furniture, be it a piece of clothing. So only then you're able to perceive the space. So that's how the interaction goes, and that's an ergonomic issue. Second is a psychophysiological issue. This again has got to do with the human's desire for sensory pleasure and delight. Now we are all human beings. We're always looking for some kind of sensory pleasure. We want to see beautiful things. We have 5 senses. So we want to see beautiful things. We want to taste tasty food. We want to touch amazing soft objects. We want to smell the best perfume. We want to hear beautiful music. So all the time right from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, we are always looking for some kind of sensory pleasure and delight. And it is important to know that lighting is one important aspect that adds to your sensory pleasure and delight. And finally, and the most neglected issue, I would say, is the health issue, because lighting affects human health in terms of sleep cycle, our hormone production, and a whole lot of psychophysiological changes that happens in your body. And a lot of times this is just not discussed, or people are not just interested in this. And this is something which I would like to highlight in the next couple of slides in this presentation. So the ergonomic issue. First is, as we discussed, it's an interaction between light and space. And the first thing that ever comes into mind is something called correlated color temperature, or CCT. Correlated color temperature is the warmth or the coolness of a light source. You have two vegetables, images of two vegetables, a set of vegetables, one on the left, one on the right. And if you look carefully, they have the same set of vegetables, but illuminated in two different types of light. The image on the left is illuminated with obviously a warm light, so all the warm tones of red, orange, and maroon are more richer and look highlighted. But on the image on the left, all the greens are looking much more fresher because it's illuminated with a cool light. So you can straight away see that colors in a space are affected by the type of color temperature we use. So that's the first interaction between light and space. And secondly, the type of color rendering. Now, color rendering index was an outdated concept before, and now it's just become color rendering. Now we have other types of color rendering indexes that are there. Now, if you look at the same set of vegetables, one is illuminated with a very monochromatic light, obviously, which has a very poor color rendering. So everything looks the same green color. The other, all the vegetables start looking much more richer because it has all the spectrums involved in the light source that are there. And that's why each of these colors are rendered that much more better. So the spectral power distribution of the light is that much more better in rendering all these colors. So that's the first set a designer or an architect or an interior designer would look at, is correlated color temperature and the color rendering of the light source. Let's have a look at a very practical aspect of this interaction of light and space. We have two different spaces. Obviously, you can see that the image on the right has a very warm tone to it in terms of the colors and also the light source. The image on the left has a slightly cooler tone. Now let's look at it in detail. How is it that the spatial characteristics and the lighting characteristics interact with each other? First are the chromatic or the color contrasts. We all know about the color wheel. There are different hues, there are different chromas, and then there are different values. A look at this image and the color wheel closely shows that all the color tones that are being used in this space come from one family of colors, which is the orange yellow. It's just you have different tonalities that are being used here. And what is important to see here is that the light tone also has a very warm tone to it. So the entire space matches with that warmness of the light source and the colors of the architecture. The second is luminous or brightness contrasts. So although this is a very monochromatic scheme of just grays, you can see that the grays happens in different gradations or brightnesses. So the floor is at a much darker tone, and the walls and the ceiling are happening at a progressively lighter tone. And this creates a bit of a visual balance. So there is luminous contrast happening in the space, and that adds to the visual interest. And the light obviously is a very cool tone of light because that's what matches with grayish tone of the space. Psychophysiological issue. Lighting primarily consists of two parts. First is functionality, where you have to function comfortably and feel safe in that space. Let's look at the image on the right. It's a parking lot. Late in the night, if there's someone working late night, there's a lady who's working in a call center, and she comes back after a night shift. After parking her car in this parking area, there are two things that are there. She should be able to safely navigate from the parking area to her residence door. And while navigating, she also has to feel safe, because if there's any oncoming danger, the lighting has to be providing her with that kind of sense of feeling and security that yes, this place is safe for me to
remote
park my
AC
car and go to my home. So there's this overall essence of functionality. Now let's look at the image on the left. There's this whole image of sensuality. This is the Millennium Bridge in UK. And when this bridge was designed, what was apparently reported is that people of this city used to park their cars and take a walk on this bridge, because the whole experience of walking on this bridge, especially because of the lighting, was enticing and pleasing to the senses. So there's this aspect of sensuality. So it's this interesting mix of functionality and sensuality that makes the lighting design that much more meaningful. Third, last but not the least, which is the health issue. Now, there are a lot of hormonal changes that happens in the body. I will only be discussing the most important, the most relevant to this lecture on architecture and integration of lighting and architecture. First is light is regulation of a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin regulates sleep and wake cycles of the body clock. So melatonin is a hormone that is produced in the brain. There's a small gland called the pineal gland. And what it does is that it regulates the internal sleep and wake clock. So when melatonin production increases, and that normally happens at night, or when the light levels, the ambient light levels come down, when the sun starts setting, your body starts producing melatonin, and it's almost puts your body off to sleep. And melatonin is a very essential hormone because it gives this level of rest to all your other glands, right from your adrenaline to your pituitary to your liver to your pancreas. And melatonin is required for the proper functioning and resting of all these glands and these organs. So it's the most essential hormone. And if you've noticed, if you've done a late night shift, maybe stayed over late at a party, the next day when you wake up, you have this really acidic feeling in your stomach. That's because the melatonin production is completely disrupted because you've been staying awake all night. And that in turn goes ahead and disrupts all your other glands production, other hormone productions, especially from your liver, the bile, and that causes that kind of acidic feelings during the day. And once you go off to sleep, you feel that much more better because the melatonin production has happened and it balances out the rest of your hormones. The second hormone that I will talk about is cortisol. Now, cortisol is a hormone that regulates your muscular activities. Your nervous system consists of something called a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is the go nervous system that makes you go into action. Parasympathetic is your stop system that says it's time to relax and stop. So this balance is taken care of by this hormone called cortisol. How do this biological information translate to lighting information? Now let's look at the visible spectrum of light and see if you can draw any kind of conclusions from here as to how your melatonin and cortisol production is taken care of by light. Now we all know the visual spectrum of light consists of blue light from 450 nanometers to about 700 nanometers, which is the red light. Now cortisol production is maximum at the yellow end of the spectrum, which means that whenever you're under yellow light, that's where your cortisol production is maximum. So you feel that much more rejuvenated, and that really activates your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. So if you've gone ahead and had a coffee at a barista coffee shop, it was not just the coffee that makes you that much more active. It's also the warm light that was there in the coffee shop that really affects your whole cortisol production and your nervous system. And the blue light, which is primarily responsible for suppression of melatonin, is also a very important aspect. So whenever, especially when you're designing offices where you want employee concentration levels higher and you don't want them to doze off or feel drowsy while working, you have blue rich light that is being used in those spaces, because blue tends to suppress the melatonin levels, and that is a very important and interesting aspect to look at while designing spaces. So the color of light has a very important role in your human well-being inside a space. Moving on to the process of design. Now, lighting design, like any other design process, involves programming. Programming involves underlining the goals and objectives and identifying the opportunities and constraints. Now let's look at another example, and these sketches are done, beautiful sketches are done by one of my favorite lighting design offices, which is for Spears and Major. So this was the St. Martin's Place Cathedral. And how does one design the lighting for the space? So obviously, identification of goals and the objectives. What are the goals and objectives here? Is to first see which aspect of this building or which area of the building that is going to be highlighting. So obviously the tower, which is the tallest point that needs to be highlighted, and then the immediate building facade, because the building facade is the interaction between the people using that area and the immediate urban environment. So those are the two important buildings or the goals and the objectives highlighting. And then you look at the design in more details to identify what opportunities and constraints are there for illuminating this kind of building or space. Goals and objectives also involve identifying what type of lighting that you're going to be doing, whether it's residential, commercial, or urban lighting. For residential lighting, we need to enable something called multitasking for different activities, because especially after this COVID pandemic, we know that homes are becoming a multitasking, multi-zone area where we have office meetings happen at home, all your work activities happen at home. You also want to throw your parties at home. You want to have meetings, you want to have cozy dinners, everything happens at the home. So you have a lot of multitasking, different types of activities happening in the same space. And you obviously need to design light. One type of lighting will not do the job. You need different types of lighting for the different types of activities in the same space. Commercial lighting is important to look beyond commercial goals, because we all know that whenever we discuss with commercial clients, all that they're looking at is ROI, or return on investment. But what we need to educate our clients is that there's a lot more to a project than just ROI. We need to look at employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, user satisfaction, and all of this ultimately end up adding to the ROI. And looking at urban design or urban lighting, we need lighting that can enhance the infrastructure, social interaction, and tourism within the space, within the city, within the town, or within the urban area. And lighting has a key role in all of these. Opportunities and constraints. Now, one of the best opportunities that I find is to be inspired from nature, because nature always gives us the best examples of design. The image on the right is from a very famous historical building called the Pantheon, and it's very famous for its oculus. And what is interesting to note that this design is not the original design, because it has been inspired by a phenomena that happens in nature when the sunlight filters through these clouds, and it's called the finger of God. And the same concept has been implemented in this design of the Pantheon, and that's why Pantheon is still considered such a timeless design, because it's been directly inspired by nature. We all talk about dynamic and color changing light. Again, nature is the best inspiration. All of these are images of the same building, the same tree, but the photograph is taken at different times of the day and different seasons. And you can notice very easily that how everlastingly changing daylight is. So this whole direct relationship between the outside and the inside is always great whenever there's daylight in play. Now, when you have a lot of direct connection with daylight, glare can be an issue, and glare can be very subjective too, because uh, I would always prefer, even if there's a window, there's a lot of glare happening, I would still prefer a direct connection with the outside and a look and the view of the outside. So it is important as lighting designers, architects and designers to mitigate glare, but still provide the necessary view of the outside, because it improves well-being and productivity of anybody. And especially considering these times of COVID and lockdown, when everybody is literally locked down inside their house and they are dying to look out, have a view of the outside, it's important all the more to provide this direct connection with the outside through our windows. Opportunities also include layering of light. Layering of light means each space has got different activities and different functions. Now, if you see this conference room, there are three images of the same conference room, but each of these three images, one thing is different, and that is the lighting, because different moods have been created with lighting. The image on the extreme left is more a general illumination that is provided maybe for a maintenance scene of cleanliness. The image on the center, which has an even wash on the back wall, adds a lot of formality to the place. So it adds the grandeur and makes it a little bit more formal meeting. And the image on the extreme left has this accentuated washes on the wall to give it a little bit more casual feel. So more and the warm temperature of the light only adds to the casualness of this place. So you have different layers of light that support different activities, and it actually ends up providing flexibility to the place. So one space you have different activities, and lighting changes the complete mood of the place. Lighting has a very important impact on architecture. One example that I'd like to show you is the Akshardham temple in New Delhi. Now, when this temple was designed, there were more than 2,000 craftsmen working on this. There were intricately carvings of the story of different elephants, different historical events that happened have been carved on this temple. But the trouble was, which were the pujaris of the temple identified, pujaris are the priests, if I'm to be more precise, identified was that during the day, the temple was so magnificent, but people only looked at the size of the temple and they almost missed out looking at the intricate carvings. So the challenge put forward for the lighting designer was to make or highlight all these carvings at night. So if you look at the image on the left, you can see that different color temperatures have been used to highlight different aspects of the temple. So this one monolithic structure of the temple that looks so monolithic during the day has been systematically broken apart, dissociated with the use of lighting. So you see the water body, then you see the gargoyles. Above that, you see the elephant plinth. Then you see the friezes and the carvings. Then you see the columns, and then you see the tower of the dome or the tower of the temple. And each of these has different treatments. So this lighting is used to systematically dissociate different elements of architecture. And during the night, people who come and visit this temple are able to enjoy and relish each of these carvings in that manner. So lighting has a very important impact on architecture. Now, one more example that I'd like to show is, which is a direct contrast of dissociation, and I call it association. This was another project that I got to work on in Switzerland. If you see the image on the right, there was a 100-year-old classic brick and mortar building, and there was a renovation and extension happening to this building. It's the Merck Research Laboratory. It's a pharmaceutical company. And the architect, Helmut Jahn, who's famous for making glass boxes, built a completely steel and glass building right next to this brick building. And the challenge that was put forward to the lighting designer was that I have two different periods of architecture. One is a 100-year-old futuristic building, and one is a very modern steel and glass building. And how are you going to seamlessly blend these two architectures? Now, if you look at the image on the left, the building, which is lit from the outside, the brick elements of the classical building are lit from the outside, and the glass elements of the modern building are lit from the inside. So there's a systematic association that is happening. So two different periods of architecture are seamlessly blended by the use of lighting. The same type of color temperatures have been used so that the blend happens very seamlessly. So lighting can be used to dissociate, lighting can be used to associate periods of architecture. One more opportunity that happens is the use of luminous. Luminous can highlight architectural features, like the image on the right, where you have light fixtures that are highlighting the park bench or the wall on the park. And the image on the left, you see those light fixtures which are actually the size of the stones that are being used for building this building. So they become an architectural feature. So there is no right or wrong in design. Depending upon the designer's intent and what is good for the project, you need to make these calculated decisions. And luminous can highlight, can either highlight, can become a blended architectural feature. Another two examples that I'd like to show here of luminous highlighting. The image on the right is the same Akshardham temple from the interior. Now, Akshardham temple from the outside was built with a lot of sandstone, and the inside there was a lot of intricate marble that was used for carving. And it would have been a very bad decision to have any kind of exposed light fixtures, because it would have taken away from the carvings, that the whole glory of this architecture was to enhance, to relish these carvings. So whatever light fixtures that are being used are concealed light fixtures. There are buried light fixtures, in-ground light fixtures on the base of the columns. And then there are these projectors that are mounted above the columns in those bracket areas. I'm just using my mouse here. If you can notice these, there are these light fixtures that are mounted in between those brackets, highlighting the ceiling. So all the light fixtures are concealed within the architecture, because the architecture itself is so magnificent. The lighting has to take a back seat and just highlight the architecture and not be visible. But there was another contrasting scenario that happened in this project on the left. This was the Metro Cinema in Mumbai. Metro Cinema was a 100-year-old piece of architecture built during the Art Deco time. So when Metro Cinema was renovated, the Heritage Council of Mumbai had made a strict rule that whatever renovation is done, the Art Deco style of this building has to be maintained, which was a fantastic decision in my opinion. So whatever light fixtures that are used also had to be Art Deco. So while designing this theater, I had to look at examples of Art Deco fixtures from 100 years ago and have them manufactured in custom design. So you see this image below of this custom light fixture, which was built using modern materials, but the design is very much inspired from the older Art Deco features and has been installed over here. So it's very much depend on the architecture and the need of this area. So luminous can highlight the architectural features, like in the Akshardham temple. Luminous can become an architectural feature, like in this metro cinema. So you have concealed luminous, revealed luminous, depending upon the project brief and what is required. So there is nothing right or wrong. You have to make a very calculated and measured choice depending upon the needs of this project. Opportunities and constraints also include individualized controls. Office lighting is something which is a very, very highly debated topic, because the minimum lux requirement says office lighting has to be 500 lux. And whenever you have the engineered approach, what is normally done is they run a calculation software using Relux or Dilux and then say, okay, I provide these many luminous and a 500 lux blanket of light. What you have to notice in the standards is that 500 lux is required only on the worktop area. Why should so much excess light be provided in the non-working areas, especially your corridors or the movement areas? Those areas do not require 500 lux of light. They only require probably a maximum of 150 or 200 lux. So what is needed is individualized control. So what you do is dim down the light and provide task lighting only in those areas where the user is going to be using maximum, where there's the maximum amount of light that is needed. And all the areas can be dimmed down or less lighting is provided. That way you save energy and you also provide user satisfaction, because users are able to control the lighting as per their requirements. And this level of controllability adds to the user satisfaction. Moving on to the next topic, which is residential spaces. We had already discussed about how residential spaces are all becoming the whole thing about multitasking. So we break up the residential spaces based on activities, not on rooms. So we look at facade and entrance, we look at the foyer, and then we look at what all activities that happen in the residential space. So the first impression of any residence can be provided by the variance in luminous intensity. So when you look at this grand residence, moment your eye goes to the brightest spot, and that brightest spot is the entrance. So lighting can actually start giving these subtle cues. So whenever you have a residence, and if you want to direct your guests or visitors to your entrance, you can subtly do that with lighting. You can either provide bright light or any kind of visual cue using light to show or direct your guests or visitors to show that this is the entrance, so that they don't go about looking here and there as to how to enter the building. So that is the first impression that we create. Next is the foyer. The foyer is the transition zone between the outside and the inside, and it's a very important zone, because imagine you're coming from in a hot Monday afternoon. Outside the daylight is really bright, and then your eyes are adapted to that 1 lakh lux of illumination levels that is there on the outside. And then the moment you step inside the house, you're completely blindfolded, because your eyes and your pupils are adapted to the brightness, and then you enter and it's too dark. So foyer is a space which you can use for transition by providing morning and evening light. So this transition light is smooth for the eye to adapt to different illumination levels. And the same thing applies while going from the inside to the outside too, because when you're on the inside, your eyes are adapted to the low level of light. Now, and then suddenly you step into a bright sky, then your eyes again get blinded by this excess of light. So when you have a foyer where there's transition zone, that there's a lot of daylight that is filtering in, or you have supplemental artificial lighting, it provides that time for the eye to adjust to that brightness and darkness. And this is a good way of adaptation level or a transition zone. It is also important to provide seating for the elderly, because when the elderly get older, their eyes take that much more time to adapt. So if somebody is entering into a foyer, it will be advisable to provide a seating zone so that the elderly person can have a sit, wait for the eye to adapt, and then move inside. And the same way, when they want to go out, they can sit, wait for the eyes to adapt to the brightness of the outside, and then they can step outside. This way, they can avoid any kind of accidents, they tripping over anything, because the eyes are suitably adapted to the. And I know this is beyond lighting design, but all of this is part of overall human-centric design that needs to be taken into consideration. After the foyer comes the hallways and the staircases. Hallways and staircases are movement areas. There is vertical movement, there is horizontal movement. Vertical movement is all the more careful because there's this big chance of people tripping over and stepping and falling off. So you need staircase, especially you need lighting that lights up the treads and the risers so that people can safely navigate a staircase. Corridors may not be that risky like staircases, but then imagine you have a very long corridor. How do you break the monotony of the corridor? That can be done with lighting. So you have decorative elements of light in different intervals. So that way you can help in adding that visual interest and breaking the monotony of the lighting. Moving on to different activities that happen in a house. Let's look at cooking and dining. Now, cooking is one of the more dangerous activities that happens in the house, because you're always working with sharp objects, you're always working with hot objects. So you need high horizontal illumination on the worktop so that you know what activities that you're doing and you don't injure yourself performing those activities. Then you need a general illumination, which is soft ambient illumination, which provides an overview and you're able to safely navigate into that area. And imagine if you have a kitchen cum dining, it might be advisable to add a few decorative elements. So if you look at this kitchen area now, you have the horizontal illumination for the worktop, which is really bright. Then you have the general soft illumination, the indirect illumination, which gives you the overall general illumination for safe navigation. And then you have these three decorative pendants for the dining area to add the decorative elements and the element of accentuation. So that way you start layering your light in a cooking or a dining space. Activities also include writing and computers, because nowadays you don't have one single writing table. Your writing table doubles up as a computer table, or a computer table doubles up as a writing table. So what you need is direct and flexible task lighting. One way of looking at it is you have light that is directed directly onto your keyboard while working on your computer, and you have task lights to help you write. So that is one way of looking at it in terms of flexible, cost-effective, and easy to use light fixtures. Reading happens in different areas. Now you sit and read on your table, you sit and read on your couch, you sit and read on your dining table. What is important is light for reading has to be personalized. Direct and flexible task lighting is the ideal. So ideally, light should come from behind your head, and it has to be directed directly onto your reading area without any disturbances. So that is the best light for reading. And how that is designed, again, depends on your requirements, the design constraints that are happening. But that is one way of looking about how to do lighting for reading. Lighting for sleeping. Now, that's a very interesting challenge, because especially in your sleeping room or your bedroom, there are different types of activities where you have different moods, you have different tasks. So whenever there's a couple using a bedroom, one person might like to read on the bed while the other person wants to sleep. So how do you have lighting that is useful for one and doesn't disturb the other? Ideally, it's good to have task lighting so that the light is directed only onto the person who's reading and it doesn't disturb the person while sleeping. And the whole aspect of giving mood lighting in a bedroom is something which is catching on. Lighting that could enhance your sleep patterns, that also can be taken care of. So that is something which needs to be taken into consideration in residential design. You have grooming areas, which can be bathrooms, your shaving mirror. And while grooming, you need personalized lighting that is accentuated for self-actualization, especially when you're looking in the mirror. One has to be careful that you don't have a downlight or light fixture right above your head, because then it ends up creating these ugly shadows under your eyebrows, shadows under your nose and on your lips. And especially for women who want to put on a makeup, this can become a nightmare trying to put makeup under that kind of a light. Ideally, when you're using a mirror, light should come from the mirror, which is soft, shadow-free illumination, so that the face is very well illuminated from all ends, and you're able to perform your activity of putting on makeup or you shaving your beard. Bathrooms can be slick areas, and slick areas can be also a zone of the maximum number of accidents due to slipping and falling. So you need lighting that enhances the space and is adequate enough for the person to understand that there's water spill on this area and I need to be careful while walking. So apart from accentuation, this whole element of task lighting is also needed in grooming areas.
Thank you, sir. It was much informative.
Now I would request Dr. Pranita, one of the coordinators, to introduce the speaking speaker for today, Mr. C. Tej Prakash from Light Up. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Sanju. Thank you so much, Amardeep, for a very enlightening presentation. I'm sure what we've done is to push all the question answers together after the two presentations so that both of you are available to take the questions. Introducing our next speaker is a pleasure and a privilege. Tej Prakash is our go-to person for many a designer who rely on his knowledge of light fixtures, fittings, and how it has transitioned over time. When it was CFL to when it is LED now, and when even in LED, when we had all these flexi lights come in, he was the first person who would come and educate us about it. So today we're taking advantage of his 20 years in this field to understand more about light fittings and light fixtures, especially the ones that can be used in the residential segment. Welcome, Tej. The name itself, Tej Prakash, says light. So over to you, Tej, for the next session.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Think that the slide is on. I think it's not visible.
If the slide is on, you can put it on a full screen, maybe. And share screen.
Yeah. some technical issues.
You can put it as a slideshow, sir.
Yeah, slideshow only.
Yeah.
Good evening, all. Myself, Tejwar from Light Art. I have an experience of around 16 years in this lighting field, and I thank IIID team to introduce me here. So let's start this version. Did you all know that artificial lighting draws attention to textures, colors, and forms of a space, helping interior design achieve its true purpose? As Mr. Amardeep told, vision is the single most important sense through which we enjoy interior design, and lighting enhances the way we perceive it even more. So basically, there are three types of lighting. One is ambient, accent, and task lighting. Ambient lighting is used to provide even illumination of light throughout the room, which leaves no space dark. Second is accent, which is used to create a different focal points. Task light is used when performing a specific task. And in this, you have four versions of lighting. One is recessed, another is surface mounted, third is pendant, and fourth is pendant with up-down versions. So whatever fixture you put, you have to play around these four types of fixtures only. Now, starting with this recessed version, the new trend is the downlight which has 3 CCD in one single fixture. Example, if elderly people want a white light, and now the new generation people want a neutral white light, or at the party time we want warm white light, we can adjust all 3 color CCD colors in one single fixture with the help of a remote itself. So, can I have the video, please? Is the video available?
Can you switch on the video?
No, can I have Kirtana or Anju to please share the video?
Yeah, ma'am, I'll share the video. Okay. Ma'am, you're able to see the video, ma'am. It's playing. Ma'am?
No.
Ma'am, the video is playing. 1 second, ma'am. Just a minute.
No issues. We can move to second slide. Next slide.
Thank you, Tej. We can move ahead to the next slide.
Yeah.
And come back to the video at the end.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you can project the presentation stage.
Okay, ma'am.
Stage first presentation.
Yeah. That was the three color light, which is now trending in market now, and now this is a fixed downlight, which comes with.
You see, the spotlight is on you and not the presentation. So you just unpin yourself. So, yeah. Anju is presenting to you. You'll just go on, Anju, to the fourth slide. Go to the next slide.
Next one. Yeah. These are The previous one.
Okay, sir.
These are the fixed downlights. Comes with different colors of aluminum reflectors to suit the interiors. The black and copper can go on the wooden ceiling. The black and chrome reflector can go on the plain black ceiling also, and rest depends on the interior design, how the aesthetic wise you want. And the next one, please. Yeah. These are fixtures made up of, not made up of any metal. These are made up of gypsum. The main beauty of these fixtures are it merges with the gypsum ceiling itself. So you won't see any trim of the fixture. By this, the aesthetic wise, the space will look nice and the space will look bigger also. One more advantage of these gypsum fixtures are you can get it painted. If you are painting the ceiling into black color or any other color, you can paint the fixture itself. So by this, you can't even count how many fittings are there in the ceiling itself. And these are all deep recessed, so they are literally totally anti-glare fixtures. Next one, please. Yeah. Coming to the wall washers. These are basically used as a secondary light and not as a primary light because these are all indirect lighting. These are asymmetric reflectors which washes the wall and doesn't allow the light to fall on the floor. So these may create a scallop effect on the wall depending upon the spacing of the fixture. And these also comes in wide range of reflectors finish also. Next one. Yeah. This is cove lighting. Cove lighting can be done in two ways. One is dimmable and one is non-dimmable. The main purpose of this cove lighting is to make the space look bigger and without any glare on the eyes. This cove lighting or indirect lighting will totally change the ambience of the space. Next one, ma'am. Next slide, please. Yeah. These are all surface-mounted lights. If you don't have a fall ceiling or a gypsum ceiling in the project, you can use these surface-mounted lights, which is as equal as a recessed downlight. So these also comes with different types of aluminum reflectors to suit the interiors and complement each other. The cylindrical downlights will spot on the floor. It won't give the even distribution. So if you have a narrow passage or something, you can use these cylindrical downlights. Rest everything you can use for a general lighting. And these cylindrical lights comes in adjustable versions also. So you can make the same fitting as a downlight or as a wall washer also. Next, please. Yeah. Coming to the living room and dining area, these are some decorative lights. These are procured from all parts of the globe, depending on the designs. Some of them made up of blown glass, some are made up of thick crystal glass. And these you can use in informal living, formal living, and dining area too. Next, please. Yeah. These are single pendant lights used in the corners or in the either side of the bedside. So these also add aesthetic-wise new look to the spaces. These can be made in clusters also, or can be hung in the single versions also. Next one, please. Yeah. This is a family of decorative lights to complete a room. So you can finish with a single family, so the room doesn't look like a showroom. So the same concept of wall light, floor lamp, table lamp, pendant, or ceiling version can be done. So it looks even and neat. The space looks even and neat. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Coming to the most important part, we are aware of the chandeliers, downlights, decorative lights, everything. But the main part of the project depends on the under cabinet lights. For example, you can put these fixtures under cabinet in the kitchen cabinets, study area, wardrobes, and you can add a sensor to it so that the electricity is safe and the maintenance cost of the switch is also safe. And these also comes in different forms. Coming to the staircase areas, these are recessed foot lamps which creates a pattern on the floor without hitting the eyes. The main intention of these staircase lighting is to highlight the steps alone, not to floodlight the entire area or the atrium or double light, anything like that. So these are useful for highlighting the steps also. Next, please. Yeah. The previous one was for the staircase light, and these you can use inside the rooms, near the restrooms or near the entrance. This comes in recessed version and surface mounted versions both. So huge range of range is available in that. So I think we have covered almost the area of this one. And not much taking time. We'll close with the code. Next slide, please. Yeah, because lighting is a huge subject. I think I have connected with all the basic lighting needs. I would like to end up with the code. The key to great design is capturing the spirit of client and the essence of space. And I thank the IIT team and everyone to be part of me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I hope your product presentation was very useful for us. Thank you for presenting. Now we have our Q&A session. I request the interior students from MGR to ask their questions.
Thank you, Kirti. This is Shavya here, sir. So you were talking about there are actually so many lighting options available in the market, but we would like to know how do we choose the right lighting color for a particular interior space? Is it merely based on our choice, or is there any particular standard that we need to follow?
No, it's not a particular standard of CCT what you have to choose. It all depends on the client's taste. Normally, we use 4000K for living area, 4000K for living and dining. For common area, we use 4000K, and in rooms, we use 6000K or 3000K depending upon the client's taste. So, to avoid that confusion, a new product which I told you, the 3 color temperature in one single fitting, that has come. So that has avoided many of the confusions. You can control 3 types of color temperatures in one fitting itself.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, sir. It was very informative, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Participants, if you have any questions, you can ask directly.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Sana Salim. I'm also from Interior Architecture and from MGR. So, sir, in this semester, we are doing the design project on theatre design, mainly the interior of theatre design. So, I wanted to ask you, what are the design considerations that is we have to follow? That lighting is not something that you have to consider in the end of a design, that you have to consider at the very beginning of our design process itself. So I wanted to ask you, what are the design considerations that we have to, that is the must factors that we should consider in our theatre design from the very beginning of the design process itself, for a theatre design particularly.
Yes, the lighting has to be discussed at least 4 or 5 months before completion, so that all the fixtures can get procured, because some may be available, some we have to get it imported, so that may also take time. So people give importance to the kitchen, the home theater, the marble, woodwork and all. They forget lighting, because lighting comes at the end of the stage. They buy what is available right now. If they come priorly 5-6 months before, we can give what they want and not that what I have to sell. So they have to come earlier.
Architect Pranita, is there any way I can answer the earlier question to on this question?
Yes, sir, please.
That I think would be a design.
Yeah, because I think the answers that were given were probably from person who's into the sales perspective. I think design is the more important aspect. Yes, sales is very important. For the first question, when she said the student asked about what colors to choose, what I would say is that I think in the presentation had clearly mentioned, it's the architectural impact that needs to be taken care of in the beginning. So by architectural impact, meaning I mean, there's no hard and fast rule that you have to choose 4,000 Kelvin or 3,000 Kelvin for your thing. It always depends on your color scheme. So imagine you have a very, inside your living room, if you have a very warm color tone like red, beiges, oranges, then 4,000 Kelvin will be a very bad choice because your red and beiges will not look very nice. For that, you'll have to use a 3,000 Kelvin. So it is very much dependent upon your architectural impact. I mean, the general trend that is used in space is 4,000 Kelvin for a living room, 3,000 Kelvin for a bedroom, but it is very much dependent on your color scheme. So determine your color scheme first, determine your furniture scheme first, determine what are the color templates, what are the palettes, the materials, and then we go ahead deciding what is the color scheme that needs to be used. And for the second question, which the student asked about theater design, now,
Yes, sir.
Is it a performance art theater? What theater is it?
Actually, multiplex theater. Multiplex.
Okay.
Interior of a
Now,
multiplex.
yeah, it's a cinema hall, you mean?
Yes, sir.
It's a multiplex cinema hall. So in a cinema hall multiplex, there are a couple of points that you need to look at. First is the entrance of in the presentation, as I mentioned, the entrance of the cinema hall. You want people to notice it from all parts of, whenever a new cinema hall comes up. How do you notice that there's a cinema hall here? Man, the facade you look at, you say, wow, there's a beautiful lighting that has been done to the facade. There is something exciting going on inside. So that is the first sign of that cinema hall. Then you go enter into that cinema hall. What is the first thing that you look at? It's the ticket counter, the concessions box, concessions counters. What are the things that you need to be looking at in terms of lighting? One is you want customers to come in, they need to buy the food, so the food has to be looked, because concession is people want to eat the food, right? So why do people want to sell? A popcorn that is sold outside for 50 rupees, inside a movie theater is sold for 350 rupees.
Yes.
It's the same popcorn, but people still buy it because the lighting it's put on that such a way that you make the popcorn that much more attractive. So all those are aspects that you need to look at. So that's why lighting plays a very key role. It's the same samosa, it's the same ice cream, but everything is priced 5 times, 6 times, 7 times over, but people still go ahead and buy it because mainly, apart from the whole feeling, it's the lighting that plays the role in that. So that needs to be taken care of.
Yes.
Once that is done, what is the next activity that you do? You enter the cinema hall. Cinema hall, there should be enough lighting that needs to be, you need to safely navigate the staircases. I had mentioned the thing about staircases in my lecture, how there are risers and treads. You need to be carefully able to navigate on that, because imagine you're having a big tray of popcorn, your Coke and all that, and suddenly you trip over a staircase and fall, the whole thing falls down. You don't want to do that. All your 2,000, 3,000 rupees of stuff that you bought is all gone. So you need to be careful, you need to be proper lighting. So look at that as a thing. So everything you need to analyze it as an activity. So imagine what does the user do when they're going into a space? And based on that, you need to design the lighting. Just like how you design your architecture, you need to design your lighting. The programming, the scheme, pretty much the same. It's just that you have a different hat on in terms of a lighting designer than an architect. I hope that answers my questions, your questions.
Yes, sir. It was very informative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was well answered, because there are different areas and you need to plan for each area. That's what Dr. Amardeep has highlighted for you. I think Sendil Wale has, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. Sendil, you have a question? Can you?
Yes, I'm an architect here. Can you hear? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, my two questions to Dr. Amardeep, mainly from his presentation. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Doctor. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
My first question is regarding the Akshardham temple, where you spoke about lighting in the evening and night, and you had to focus on the culture, lighting or whatever. And you mentioned that different color temperatures are used. I think the eye goes, I think the eye might adjust, especially from a long distance. I'm not very sure the photograph might be actually lying in because there are ways of, confounding the differences.
No, it's a very good question. First thing you need to understand is that the material used for this temple was red sandstone.
Right.
So all the color temperatures that were used were all warm color temperatures. So even if there was a slight gradation in the color temperatures, we used everything from 2200 Kelvin, slightly going up to 2500 Kelvin, then to 2700 Kelvin, and then to 3000 Kelvin. So the difference in color temperatures was not more than about 700 or 800 Kelvin temperatures. So it is not like we used a 6000 Kelvin and then we used a 3000 Kelvin, because that would have been really bad and the contrast would have really been bad. So we use a very gentle degradation of color temperatures so that the eye goes from the corners, which are 2700 Kelvin, then slowly comes up to the base, which is about 2700 Kelvin, and then slowly move up to the columns, which is 3000, and all the way up to the top of the domes of the temple, which is about again 3000 Kelvin. So it was a gentle gradation of color temperatures, not a very stark gradation.
And they are all in the warm range.
All in the warm range, yes, all in the warm range.
Okay, that answers the question. The second question is, task lighting, especially when, let's say, in a bedroom situation where you need, you want to read in the night.
Yeah.
You actually illustrated it with a picture of a girl reading with a kind of night lamp or reading light.
Yes, yes.
But, my take on that, as a designer would be that it's actually very difficult for the eye to adjust, because the eye needs to take the eye, we have to take eyes off from the reading matter and look at, something, that's a natural phenomenon to occur. And a situation like that, if I have to look into pitch darkness and then move my eye back to, my...
See, now, the thing is, again, a very nice question, a very relevant question that I would say. You need to understand that when you're reading on the bedside, and the idea is somebody else wants to go to bed next to you, your partner wants to go to bed next to you.
Right.
You don't want to disturb the person. And when you're doing such kind of reading, you also should notice that you're not going to be doing a very long time reading, maybe maximum for half an hour, maximum for 45 minutes. That's the only time. If you want to read long hours, for maybe like say 2 hours, 3 hours, then might as well move away from the bedroom, move to a proper place where you have. So this is only for short-term reading. It's not for long-term reading. So the task light that was mentioned there, and even that if you've seen the residential, I had shown an image of a different kind of a task light, which is not just a focusable gooseneck. It was a different proper task light mounted on the wall. So when you're wanting to do longer reading, then you need to have a proper task light, not just that gooseneck task light.
That part is understood. I was just curious about the reading part, whether there are any other solutions.
Yeah, there are different types. But for bedside reading, I would say there are places where you have light fixtures coming from the ceiling. Also, you have focusable ones that you can focus onto your book. But those are, again, I would say not more than 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Should not be for long time. It's just that, there are a few things you want to read. Some people have this habit of reading a novel before going to bed. And the idea is that reading the novel helps them go to bed. So they read only for like half an hour and then they say, yes, I'm feeling sleepy, I want to go to bed. So for that alone, that task light is good. But if you want to do a proper document reading and all that, then it's better you go to your study and have a proper task light reading.
Okay, right. And the third question relates to an office situation, workplace.
Yeah.
Which is actually, it's also moving into homes now. The challenge seems to be that, previously a work table related situation was like you didn't have the screen, you didn't have to share the writing with the screen. But now it's mostly screen time.
Yeah.
And, how do you balance the two in terms of lighting? Let's say in an office situation.
Mm-hmm. See, thing is,
the screen, but you still have to have some kind of an ambient light, obviously, to be able to balance.
Definitely, there has to be an ambient light, no doubt about it, because the screen light can be way too bright and it stresses the eye. So one thing is always try to put, even if your home office, try to put your office inside a place where there is natural daylight coming in. Even now, if you notice, I'm sitting on my terrace simply because I'm going to be looking at the screen for too long and I don't want that. I want a proper air and I want proper light coming. When I'm going to be speaking to all of you, I want nice light coming onto my face when I'm speaking to you. So daylight is the best way. So I'm sitting on my terrace and when I'm interacting with you, and that's something which is my favorite place to work on because I have a lot of daylight. If it's not possible, then you need to look at supplemental illumination with artificial light, which has some quality of daylight into it inbuilt, maybe a color tunability, I don't know what. So, and that is key now to do. But ambient light is important, no doubt about that. No two ways about it.
Okay. Thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Anyone has questions at all? I know we're running out.
Sir. Good evening, sir. Samira from Dr.MGR University. I'm doing my Bachelor's of Design. I'm in third year. My question to you is, what are the key factors to consider as amateurs or being students to consider for lighting? So when we think about lighting, what are the first steps that we have to take into measure?
What design are you doing? Interior design?
Bachelor's of Design. I'm doing my Bachelor's of Design. We get to specify our main subject in the 4th year. So for now, we're just doing general Bachelor's of Design.
Okay, some 4th year, what are you going to be specializing? Do you have an idea?
I will be choosing interior designing.
Okay, so whenever you do interior design, what are the key aspects that you look at when you're doing interior design?
The elements and the principles.
Exactly. So whatever elements, whatever principles that you're looking at in design, those same principles, the same elements apply to lighting too. Because there is no architecture without lighting, and lighting and architecture are interrelated. So that's how it should be. I mean, if in architecture, you're looking at visibility, accessibility, accentuation. Lighting is the same thing. You're looking at visibility, you're looking at accessibility, you're looking at accentuation. You want a few focal points in your design because you want people to look at a few focal points, and those things will come here.
Right. Anyone else? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, good evening.
Okay.
Yeah. Sir, good evening. I'm Ramya from MRQT here. I want to know how to approach layered lighting and why it is important.
Layered lighting means just like how you have different in a space, you can have different activities happening at the same time, don't you? Because you can have a conference room, but the same conference room can be used for presentations. The same conference room can be used for things like you want to throw a party, you want to have a birthday celebration, you want to have, sometimes even the same conference room is used for dinner. So what do you do in those times? So don't you arrange the furniture? Don't you arrange a little bit of the curtains and do that? So it's the same kind of principle that applies to lighting too. So when you have a layered lighting approach, what it means is that you identify that the same space can have different activities, different functions, and you provide lighting elements to meet for each of those kind of activities and functions. So that is a layered lighting approach. So what is important is you identify your functions, and then we look at a layered lighting approach from that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So what we'll do is now restrict it to 2 more questions. One, we have architect Shruti. So Shruti, you can go ahead and ask your question. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. We will share his ID, and you can connect to him. He has our speaker today has also given a handout which will be mailed to you by after the meeting.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, can we have ask the feedback from students, ma'am?
Shruti, I think architect Shruti has the question.
Yes. I have a hello, sir. This is Shruti.
Hi,
I
Shruti.
have a question related to natural light. So, if we say if there is natural light already, will it help or hinder in designing lighting for an interior or any semi-open space, or how is it? How should we consider natural light?
Now, it depends on what function it is. natural light can be a blessing most of the time, but natural light also can be a bit of a nuisance, depending upon a function. Simply because now imagine you're designing a home theater for your client. Home theater, what kind of a lighting scenario does it require? If you're watching a movie, you need very dim, dark light levels, right?
Yes.
So if you have too much of natural light coming in, then it's a hindrance because you cannot enjoy your movie with too much of light. So again, it's very much dependent upon the function that you're looking at in your space. So natural light, if it's an office or a work area, then it's great. If it's a kitchen, amazing. If it's your study, it's the best way to light up a study because natural light always brings in a lot of these key elements. You need to be very careful about glare because especially Indian condition, the sun can be very harsh. So you need to find ways of mitigating glare. But natural light, more often than not, is a blessing. But if you have strange functions like a bar area, imagine you having a bar. Bar requires dim, low light levels. Then if you have a natural light, that could become a bit of a nuisance. Or you can play with natural light. Have you heard of Ronsham, the cathedral designed by Le Corbusier?
Yes, yes, sir.
Have you seen the play of natural light inside that cathedral?
Yes.
See how he played around with those small openings and spaces, because that cathedral was built on top of a hill, so it had a lot of daylight coming in. But the architect played around with the openings so well, the penetration details were so well planned. It brought in very little light, and the dramatic interplay of light brought in that so much of spiritual quality of light. So again, as architects, it is our role to use daylight to its maximum, depending upon what kind of function we're doing in that space.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I think that was a very illuminating session, Dr. Amity. Thank you. And thank you, both of you. Before we move any further, we have our immediate past president in the audience. I would request Architect Srinivas to share his impression. Architect Srinivasan. He's a past president of IIIT, Chennai, and has really given it a completely different spin. We are where we are because of a lot of efforts put by him and his team. Ravi, are you able to see Srinivasan, sir? All right, moving. Anyone else wants to share a feedback today's meeting?
Yeah, ma'am. There are two persons who are waiting to share their feedback today, ma'am. So, shall I call upon them, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Now I request Architect Nandakishore to share his views on today's session. Nandakishore.
Good evening, everyone. This is Nandakishore. This was indeed a very informative session. I personally liked how the session traveled right from the start when how Sir shared some of his ideologies of how lighting can be understood only by experience and exploring and experimenting to gain knowledge, etc., etc. And then I also liked how the session traveled towards some of the key topics like design issues that is related to lighting and also its identifications and how the design process is involved in different types of building typologies and also how nature is being inspired as a design in terms of design. It is also knowledge gaining experience to learn about some of all those lighting products that was shared. Overall, it was a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanda. There is one more person to share her views. I call upon Samira. Samira?
Yes, to both the sirs, thank you so much for all your insights that you have shared with us. It was indeed a very delightful and a very informative session to have. And we feel really privileged to get to know about your experiences and all your works through this. So once again, I thank you so much. And hope that we have many more sessions like this and get to know more about your insights and your intellect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samira. So now our coordinator, architect Vidya Naveen from MGR University, would be giving a thank you note to the delegates today.
Okay. Thank you, Anju. I, on behalf of Dr. MGR Educational and Research Institute and University and the entire team of Decode with IIID Chennai Regional Chapter, and on my own behalf, extend a hearty thanks to the speakers for raising your work and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. A big thank you to Dr. Amardeep Dugar for his efforts towards integrating lighting and architecture. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for his explanation of residential lighting and its psychological issues in a more visual way. Further, we are grateful to Mr. Tej Prakash for demonstrating on new trends in market and showing us the different types of lighting fixtures. Finally, I would take this opportunity to place and record our hearty thanks to our Dean, Dr. Shweta, and our HOD, Dr. Architect Radhika Ma'am, for providing constant encouragement and support in all our efforts. I also extend my thanks to Architect Jay Pantheon, Sir, Chairman of IIID Chennai Regional Chapter, and their whole team, not to forget Dr. Pranita, for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this event. We have been fortunate enough to be backed up by the team of very motivated and dedicated students. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Once again, I want to state that we are all more grateful to our speakers. We thank you for being with us this evening. It's been a great pleasure. Adding on, we would like to share our uh, the memento that we are going to present to our speakers. Please, Keetana or Anju, can you please share the screen?
Yeah, ma'am. Keetana will be sharing a screen, ma'am.
It's a small memento from our end. Hope you like it. And it was done by our artist, Thomas Rajan. Thank you, sir, for this.
Keetana?
Is it getting shared, ma?
Yeah, ma'am. Keetana sharing, ma'am.
Yeah.
Few minutes.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. Can you see my screen, ma'am?
No, not yet.
1 minute. Ma'am, 1 minute. There is some technical issue in my laptop. I'm just getting loaded.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. I think we'll be.
Ma'am, there is some issue.
Yeah, ma'am. Anju, can you do that?
I don't have that video, I guess, Keetana.
It's not a video, it's a JPEG image. Just a minute, I'll try to project it.
Okay, ma'am.
Sir, Amardeep sir, this is for you. Thank you for your time and knowledge sharing
ஹலோ
lecture.
வரீங்களாண்ணா இங்கே ஜிகே வசப்படல எல்லாம்
Thank you very much. It's
And
very
this
nice.
is for Mr. Tej Prakash. It is
Oh, great.
caricature being done by our artist. So we're happy
Very
to share
nice.
the
Very
screen.
nicely done. Very nicely done.
Thank you so much.
இப்போதைக்கு பாலாஜன் ஒரு half an hour விளையாடுறாங்களா
Are you going to be emailing this to us?
Yeah, sure, I'll do
Okay.
that.
Great. We'll put it up on our social media page.
Sure.
Yes, we'll do.
Very happy to be a part. Thank you. Over to Anju. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So now we are in the end of the session. Thank you for attending Decode. Especially the speeches were given by our delegates were so useful to us in the lighting. We gained more knowledge in this session. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Amadhi sir, and thank you so much, Stage Rekha, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a very eye-opening session, especially on lighting. Okay, guys, hope to see you again in another Decode session. There will be a second part, a continuation of this session next week on commercial lighting and exterior lighting. Those details will be shared shortly. So once again, I'd like to thank all the dignitaries, our guest speaker today, our participants, and coordinator, Dr. Pranita ma'am especially, and Vidya ma'am, and then Chairman sir, and everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Welcome.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
Thank you.